legal expert has joined us, Willem van der Merwe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Volker. Appreciate it.
We're discussing the latest developments regarding firearm licenses. Please tell us what has happened.
So, Volker, there was a significant turnaround about May this year with firearm licenses and expired firearm licenses, where SAPS actually lost a constitutional court case against Fidelity Security Services, where they were in court regarding about 700 firearm licenses with firearm licenses which has expired.
That belong to Fidelity.
Fidelity themselves, yes. And SAPS actually lost the case, and that I think is a major turnaround for firearm license holders.
Okay. Why are you saying that?
Because main reason was that the judges specifically referred to expired licenses, and they said that the main reason for the scenario that we sit in now is the fact that SAPS in actual fact interpreted the act, or the Firearms Control Act, incorrectly. There's a substantial difference between a firearm holder or a holder of a firearm and the right to possess a firearm. Basically ownership and the right to possess a firearm.
Yes.
The fact that your license lapsed and then your right to possess a firearm comes in jeopardy doesn't mean that your ownership of a firearm also lapses or expires. You still remain the owner of the firearm.
Yeah. So SAPS actually argued that you're no longer the owner if the license expires, so you lose your ownership, you lose the firearm.
Precisely.
It's forfeited basically. But the court said no, it doesn't work like that.
And most importantly, the relevance here was that SAPS can criminally prosecute you at that point in time, because now you're in illegal possession of a firearm which is not yours.
Yeah.
That was the crux of the case, and the court said no, but you still remain the owner of a firearm.
Yeah.
Where the crux also comes in, the court made certain remarks regarding the way forward of firearms. And the court said that it actually was a remark where the court said to the registrar, the registrar need to consider new applications for these title holders with firearms which licenses has expired. So that must be considered. I mean, previously we had amnesties where you had to hand in your firearm can be destroyed, and that is no longer the case. I mean, you can now simply just apply for a new firearm, and you can simply just keep the firearm safe in your possession, in your safe. Obviously, it must be there still need to be compliance with the law regarding requirements of your safe and so forth. But you can still simply apply for a new firearm license.
You can't use the firearm because you don't have a license to use it. Yeah. But because you remain the owner, as the court has now said,
correctly,
you can keep it. You don't have to give it to the state, which is what SAPS' previous position actually was.
Yes. The previous amnesty said that you need to hand it in, and then it will be subject to various tests, and whereafter you can then apply for it, but that is within the amnesty period. Obviously, that period expired now. Now you sit with a predicament where you're basically in illegal possession of a firearm, which is automatically criminal of nature.
Yeah. All right. So that was sort of the bad news for SAPS. Good news, I guess, for firearm owners. So what did SAPS now do subsequent to the court decision?
Well, Volker, since the judgment, we still had a judgment. That is what we had. There was no directives issued. I mean, at that stage, you can go to the nearest SAPS and they will simply say that, listen, you have still a firearm with lapsed firearms license. But about a week and a half ago, the minister issued new directives whereby all departments basically of SAPS dealing with firearms, I'm talking about the various departments in various towns, SAPS officers or designated firearm officers, as well as the DFO, as well as the CFR, are remanded to attend to these applications as a new application. There's
where the license has lapsed.
So you
can now apply as if it's a new license application.
That is correct. You will treat it the exact same as it's simply a new firearm.
Yes.
With the distinct difference that you need to present this firearm, or they need to inspect this firearm. You still see if the firearm is still in working condition. And secondly, you need to show your lapsed firearm license, whereafter a verification certificate will be issued, and that will be attached to your application to your DFO.
Okay. Yeah. once again, good news, I suppose. So that's the advice that you would give to any owner of a firearm as such who's got a license that has expired. So you can apply afresh, keep the firearm in safe custody in the meantime. You're allowed to do that because you remain the owner. That's what the court said. But you've got to apply as if it is a new firearm that you bought or whatever.
Yes.
But then hopefully you will be granted the license and then all is sorted.
Agree. There's three things that I think the public needs to keep in mind here. First of all, if you set an expired license, take it to go through the process, apply for a new license. Just keep in mind that your right to possess a firearm or your what do I call it, competency certificate might have expired. So obviously, if your competency certificate expired, you need to first apply for a new competency before you can apply for this new firearm.
Like with the new license application,
exact same.
In any event, yeah. So same principles.
Exact same. And remember, as I said previously, these firearms will need to be inspected as well. Remember, we talk about the IBIS testing. That's part of this test for the verification certificate. Now, I know there might be some instances where firearm owners who handed in the firearms removed the firing pin. Now, obviously, that firearm will not pass this IBIS testing course. It's obviously a firearm that's not working. So my recommendation is, listen, put the firing pin back in and make sure that the firearm is in good working condition. We don't want you to go through all the efforts to apply for your license and simply fail because there's this issue. And a very third point that is, I think, very important is the directives are not clear on what happens if your license does not succeed, if your application does not succeed. Is there an appeal process? There's no mention about the appeal process, so what's the way forward?
Because you're still the owner of the firearm.
Precisely. Yeah. So I don't know what we're going to do regarding that, but at this stage we're still very early in the process. I think we will deal with that when the first applications are dismissed or declined. I think then we can take from there on. But I suppose it will be the normal appeal process that will follow with a normal new application process.
I would suspect that most firearm owners would be hopeful that they will be granted the license in any event because they were previously obviously granted the license. That has now lapsed.
Precisely.
So I guess the criteria will more or less be the same with the new one, hopefully.
In theory, I believe so.
Then it's sorted. Then
yes.
But yeah, obviously there might be cases where the police decides, no, sorry, we can't give you that license.
In theory, it just depends on the completeness of your application. There's still lots of requirements for your standard application, lots of supporting documents that you need to still complete and fill in, in addition to the certificates that you need to comply with. And secondly, just keep in mind that the requirements back at home needs to be in place as well. If the police at any time can do an inspection of your safe requirements, and that obviously will have a huge impact on your competency as well. If your safe is not fit and proper and installed in terms of the correct procedures which the law requires.
Yes. All right. I think that clarifies the matter. Thank you.
Yes, Volker. One last point, Volker, I just want to mention as well. I think what's quite clear from the Constitutional Court and the attitude of the Constitutional Court was simply that they do not want to criminalize people who have firearm licenses which have lapsed.
So that is also the other important consequence of the court decision. So the police can now actually not prosecute, the state cannot prosecute, the police actually shouldn't arrest people that have firearms in their safe with licenses that have expired, because the court said you're still the owner, so you can still have it in your safe, but you can't use it.
Yes, that was a route which the police wanted to follow, but it seems like the Constitutional Court disagrees with this, which I think is the biggest turning point for all firearm owners.
Because there are a lot of expired licenses out there.
No, lots.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Volker. Appreciate it.